Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Just in Time Cafe's webinar. I'm Elizabeth Swan, co-founder of the Just in Time Cafe, and I'll be your moderator today. And today's webinar is titled, How to Build a Roadmap for Cultural Transformation. And that's with the beautiful, fabulous, infinitely talented Tracy O'Rourke. Let me tell you a little about Tracy. She's the co-founder of the Just in Time Cafe. She's the co-author of the Problem Solvers Toolkit, and she's an instructor for UC San Diego's Greenbelt courses and our latest course, the Lean Six Sigma Leader. She's been a Lean Six Sigma consultant, master black belt, trainer, coach for over 20 years. Welcome, Tracy.
Thank you, Elizabeth.
Just a few housekeeping notes for you guys out there. You can ask questions anytime by putting them into the chat section. There's a Q&A section too, but we'll mainly be monitoring chat, and Tracy's going to ask you questions at different times, and you can put those in chat. Also, these webinars are going to be available to you. We'll post the recordings. Anyone that registered, we're going to send you a link so you can see the recording if you missed anything or you just want to see Tracy's lovely face again. She'll be there for you. And that'll be at least by next week. Let's see, for our first activity, we've asked you to share where you're from. And you guys have been posting some of that already. So I'm just going to read off what I saw. We've got Larry's here from Seattle. Welcome. Doug in Jacksonville. Manuel in Germany. Thank you so much for coming. Liam's in the Isle of Man. I don't know if we've had anyone from the Isle of Man.
Wow.
Jeff in Indianapolis, who has arrived. We've got Eric in Allentown. We've got Alexander, who's in, I'm going to mess it up, Tübingen, Germany. We've got Jen. Hello, Jen. Jen's going to she's going to be on our next webinar. Jen in Tankanau. We've got Michael, good morning. Victor from Uganda. Welcome, Victor. Wow, what time is it in Uganda? Annette from New York City. Hello, Annette, and welcome. Catherine in Bristol, and Jen's in Ann Arbor, and Josh is in Kansas City. Heather's in New Hampshire. Welcome, Heather. We've got Avnish from Sweden. Welcome, Avnish. We've got Gary in Cleveland, Jessica, Ottawa, Sabine in Carlsbad. Welcome, Sabine. Hello. Ariana Rainier, Linda in Fenton, Michelle in Michigan. Welcome, Michelle. And Jamie's in Denver. Lovely to have you, Jamie. Olga, oh my God, this is an incredible list. Okay. 10 p.m. in Uganda. Thank you, Victor, for letting us know about that. And welcome, Leo from Rio de Janeiro. What'd you say, Tracy?
That's late.
That is late. That's
I'm
dedication,
impressed.
And it's worth
Thank
it.
You.
Thank you. Okay, with that, Tracy's going to tell you a little bit about the Just in Time Cafe. Over to you, Tracy.
Thank you so much. So in the past, some of you may know that Lean Six Sigma hosted these webinars and podcasts. And now the justintimecafe.com is our home. You can subscribe to our website at the JIT Cafe for short. And you can be updated for any podcasts or webinars that we're having. We're going to be doing 2 webinars a month, the first and the third Thursday of every month. And we founded the Just in Time Cafe because we really want to build up a hub where problem solvers can connect and grow. And these are our values. We want to cultivate community. We love this community. We hope you do too. We want to create an inclusive and positive space where people around the world can connect with each other and learn and grow. We believe in a trailblazing spirit, especially now with COVID. We're kind of redoing and rethinking everything we do in a virtual environment. And some have really risen to the challenge and others have decided to retire. And we want to try to maintain a constant state of awesomeness, even in a virtual environment. And finally, we believe in rising tides. By lifting each other up, we are going to strengthen the global problem-solving community. So thank you for joining us. And thanks for all, I love hearing everybody from all over the world and all over the United States. So thank you for joining us. And so we're going to cover today something near and dear to my heart, and that is really around cultural transformation and how to create unity and action with leaders with a roadmap. So by joining us today, you're going to be speaking more confidently about your own culture and how to transform it. You'll be listing the steps to take with your colleagues, and hopefully you'll be able to reference a real example with Cara Cozzetto and Unju Greenhouse, who are also joining us from King County to share what they've done, because they have many roadmaps that they've done over the years. So I'm really excited to share that with you, and they're going to be joining us at the end of this webinar. And so here's just the agenda of what we're going to be covering today. And let's get to it. So the challenge we have seen is that lots of organizations want to embark on continuous improvement, and they immediately start with training their people on Lean Six Sigma as tools. And that is unfortunate because if you want a successful continuous improvement program and transformation, there's more to it than just training. And training typically comes a little bit later. And it really only addresses one of the issues or things that you have to do, and that's training frontline problem solvers. But what about the other important considerations? What about leaders? They need to change too. It's not just training people on tools, it's leaders doing something different than what they're doing today, typically. So why do organizations start with training? I'm sure there's lots of reasons. One is it feels tangible and productive. And how many of you have seen where training measures is actually one of the metrics they're trying to hit? So number of people trained, yay, 1,000 people are trained. Nobody's done anything with it, but so that is sometimes an issue when we focus on training and the metric of training. I think what's interesting too is people go to Toyota and they visit the plant. They get a little enamored with the tools that are being implemented there on the floor, like Kanbans and supermarkets and work cells, but they don't necessarily see the invisible characteristics that are part of the culture. And that's how leaders are supporting and interacting with frontline workers and problem solving, and how leaders have a daily management system and they're incorporating leader standard work. And these things are invisible often to visitors. And they don't even call it that stuff at Toyota. It's just the Toyota way. But when somebody started recognizing there was something happening here, what is it that's happening at Toyota? They started naming it these things. And so ultimately, there's a whole area for cultural transformation that training doesn't necessarily, or tools won't address. It does require a more holistic approach. So this house contains 4 components or floors that help organizations take a more holistic approach to cultural transformation. This house is based on the Shingo model for operational excellence. It's founded by the Shingo Institute. This is a simplified model of it. And these ideas came from Shigeo Shingo. He was a leading expert and an industrial engineer in Japan. He's written lots of books, many of them not even translated into English. And he was a leading expert on manufacturing practices and the Toyota production system. His teachings are very widely practiced today. So here is the holistic approach for transformation. It's 4 floors. The roof is customer-focused results. There's enterprise alignment. There's continuous improvement. And the foundation, all important, the foundation is cultural enablers. I really like this model because it's simple. And what I really love about it is no matter where you are on this journey, you can always look at these components and really think about how you're doing in each of these areas and what you're going to do differently this year, as an example. So it's broad enough rather than being really prescriptive, so that it's a model and a structure that you can follow no matter where you are on this journey. And again, I'll be sharing a roadmap, and Cara and Unju are going to be discussing this house and how they've applied these principles later when they talk about their journey. So if you want to address just one of these floors, that's typically the continuous improvement floor is the one that is most addressed in transformational change, but really you want to take a holistic approach. So I'm going to talk a little bit about each of these just briefly. The first one is the customer focus floor. And this is really around the customer and having a focus on the customer. There's lots of different voices in organizations pulling at the process. And sometimes some of these voices are stronger than others. So this is very common. You've got voice of business. You have, that's typically money or efficiency. You have voice of process, where it could be, oh, the process isn't capable of doing that. The size of the pipe isn't very big, as an example, for flow, or there's limitations in technology. Then we have voice of department. And this is one of the more prominent voices in the process. Have you ever had a situation where there's a department that has, well, more power over other departments, and what they want, they usually get? And sometimes what they end up doing is they end up dictating how the process is going to run and make it easier for them, but they're not really thinking about the customer. So how many of you have seen that situation where some departments get what they want all the time, and sometimes it's not aligned with what the customer wants? So that's an important thing to recognize. Then there's the voice of the stakeholder. We define stakeholders as those that have an interest in how the process performs, like compliance or regulatory voices, but they don't receive the product or service from the output of the process. So stakeholder requirements may or may not align with customer requirements. And this happens a lot, excuse me, in highly regulated industries or in government, where stakeholders' voices are very strong, and they might sound like, well, you can't change that process because it's code. Just leave it the way it is. Don't touch it. We can't touch that. It's code. So these are sometimes the barriers we run into when voices are very strong. I was actually recently helping a utility company, and that was the same thing. Their policy people basically dictated how all the processes were going to run, and even their opinion of this is what I think you should do, as opposed to what really the policy was very interesting. So that can actually, all these voices can wreak havoc on the process, and it deprioritizes the customer voice too. So we want to make sure that the customer voice is heard, and ultimately it's integral to the lean culture, being in tune with customers, their customer voice, their requirements. It helps us identify waste and non-value add steps in the process. And so actions on the roadmap related to this floor will be about capturing customer voice and taking action with it. So that's really important. So let's talk about enterprise alignment. So enterprise alignment is ultimately, how does everybody understand where we're headed? So unfortunately, most people can, in organizations, say what they do, but most people can't answer, where are you headed? And this is really specific to enterprise alignment. How well do people understand where they're headed? So let's say you're driving down the road and you turn the corner and you hit a fog bank. What do? Well, we typically slow down because you can't see in front of you. You have low visibility. You're uncertain about what the road might happen or might come up. So you proceed with caution. You lose some momentum. So this is it can be very, make you feel a little uncertain. And guess what? This is how employees sometimes feel without clear vision, goals, plans. Employees are operating sometimes in the fog, and they can't see what's ahead of them, and they slow down. So, and sadly, sometimes employees have been operating in the fog for a really long time. They're desensitized to what's happening. They disengage. And we don't want that. So we really want to lift the fog for these employees. We want them to be able to speed up once the fog is clear. So that's really the goal around enterprise alignment. Is you're driving in your car, when there's no fog, you speed up, you can see the road, you have an idea of what's coming, you can plan for that. And that's really what we want leaders to be able to do for their people. We want to lift that fog for employees and less time and energy wasted on uncertainty. So ultimately, the roadmap that you're going to build, which we'll share, I know there's a little suspense there. The roadmap will contain actions related to increasing enterprise alignment. Obviously, like all the floors, The actions will depend on where you are right now. Do you already have a clear vision of the future? Has it been communicated broadly? Do people understand how they fit into that vision? So these are really important things. And if you've done some of that work, then you're not going to, then good for you. So the other piece floor is the continuous improvement floor. And how many of you, well, let me ask, when you look at this picture, what process comes to mind? So how many of you felt like you have worked in a process like this? And unfortunately, I've heard lots of comments about this when I share this with people. What process comes to mind for you? I've heard many people say, oh, the DMV. When I go to the DMV, this is what it feels like. Or when I'm getting refinanced, or I'm calling my insurance company, or employee onboarding, it feels like this. Or, well, sadly, I've heard of procurement too. When I have to go buy something, as a matter of fact, Elizabeth and I run into this a lot when we help organizations. They want us to go through the expedited procurement process. And so, because, it's a painful process. Good one, Mike. New contractor onboarding is also an issue. So these are things that, when you look at this, it's painful. Does this knot of pipes remind you of a process that you work in? Or guess what? Maybe you inherited a process that feels like this. Or worse, do you oversee a process that's designed like this and your people don't feel like they're empowered to make a change? That is really sad. And so people can be very frustrated. They're stuck in these horribly designed processes and they can't do anything about it. And we don't want that happening. So this continuous improvement floor is about activities that involve training and improving processes. It's typically the floor that most people take action on. So that's really the challenge is, and again, most people jump to this one first, but it can contain any activities. So the roadmap that you're going to build is going to contain any activities related to deploying training or other improvement efforts. So lastly, we're going to talk about the foundation of the house. And that is the most important part of the house. It holds everything up. If you don't have a solid foundation, everything crumbles. And that is cultural enablers. Cultural enablers is where we really become aware of the current behaviors of employees and leaders. And if those behaviors help or hinder a culture of continuous improvement. So this is the most important floor, like I said, and it's the most difficult to change. So why is this floor? Why do you guys think this floor would be difficult to change? Why is it hard to change leaders and employees and how they're acting in their culture? Any guesses? I'm going to wait to see what kind of comments you have around that. Yeah, good one, Jacqueline. So leaders are afraid of failing. That's true. Attitude reflects leadership. New things equal risk, not having all the answers. People are afraid of change. There's lots of reasons why there could be failure here and fear. I think sometimes leaders think they have to know all the answers to everything. And then now they're coming into a world, but they don't have all the answers. And that's supposed to be okay. So there's a couple of basic premises in the cultural aspect on the cultural enablers floor. And these are some of the things that we sort of promote in Lean. We want to really believe that people actually do a good job. People really do work hard, and that processes can make it difficult. We focus on the process, not on the people. We don't blame the people. We figure out what's going on with the process that's causing it to be hard for people. Often employees don't create the process. They're just trying to follow it and adhere to it. And they often inherit it, and it can be cumbersome and difficult. Employees sometimes don't have the power to change the process on their own. They need to be empowered. They need to be, I can't tell you how many times people have said to me, I didn't know it was okay to make the change. I was sort of told I couldn't make the change, or that I was told I shouldn't make the change. So those are challenges that we run into that employees might experience. And finally, the root cause of most problems is the way the work is designed. And how do we address those things? So let me ask you a question. Do leaders really believe these things? Do you see that your leaders or leaders that you've seen work in other organizations, do they actually believe these things? Because if they don't, we've got some work to do already. And no, I don't think leaders think this way. Yes, so this is right. So this is kind of the underlying messages that sometimes people hear. Leaders might say one thing and they may not believe these things, or their behaviors don't really support that these premises exist. So that's really sort of the start is, are these premises really in belief? And if not, we've got some work to do already. So that's a summary really quickly on the Shingo House and the 4 floors, because we've got a lot more to cover. And these all have a key principle aligned to it too. And so many organizations, like we said, they don't address the barriers with customers, enterprise alignment, or cultural enablers before they do training. And that really needs to be done before we actually even do training. So what is culture? Because we've been talking a lot about it, but what exactly is it? So this is my favorite definition. It's by John Cotter. It's a group of norms, behaviors, and underlying shared values that help keep those norms in place. So I think what's interesting about culture is everyone's participating and accepting the norms and the behaviors and helping to keep those norms in place. So leaders are actually doing something to hold the norms in place. What is it? What are the things they're doing to hold these norms in place? They don't even sometimes recognize they're doing it. So for example, if something goes wrong, are they saying, who did that? Who's responsible for that right away? Or are they resorting to, what about the process caused that to happen? So even simple things like that can help people recognize what's happening. I had a leader that never left her office unless somebody was in trouble. So guess what? When she left the office, everybody would be running for cover. I mean, you could literally watch people as she walked down the aisle go in the other direction because they were worried. She didn't even recognize she was doing it. And so these are the things that sometimes hold fear in place. And those are really important to recognize. And sometimes we're just not recognizing it. So your culture is designed perfectly to get exactly the results that you're getting right now. So if that's not the culture you want, then behaviors need to change and norms need to be identified. And so that's really what is all this about culture. They say that culture, I think Peter Drucker said it. He said, culture eats strategy for breakfast. Culture is stronger than strategy. It affects organizations more so. It affects people's lives, their views, their loyalties, the priorities. It affects all kinds of things. And you can have a plan to roll out continuous improvement for training, for tools. But if you have a high blame environment, you're going to have some serious challenges and your organization is going to struggle. So ultimately, we really want to look at culture. And that's actually one of my favorite parts about what I do is I get to go into organizations and I get to observe the culture. I've seen fear-based culture, burnout culture, perfection culture, consensus culture. Nobody can make a decision. If nobody can agree, we're not doing it. Or risk-averse culture, cussing cultures. Man, that was interesting. Everybody cussed there. Healthy cultures, I've seen healthy cultures too. So that's great. So I really like seeing the culture puzzle and help leaders create a plan to transform. And a lot of that is going to start with awareness of what is happening with the culture. So that is really what culture is. And I think this is a very important question. Where do you start? I always like to start. Some people start with surveys. They survey the employees. They do employee engagement surveys. I actually like asking leaders what they're doing to create their culture. And this is a great quote. It's one of my favorite quotes about culture. It comes from a book called Leaders with Boundaries. It's with Henry Cloud. He writes, culture is created by what is tolerated and what is promoted. So what do we tolerate or allow? And what do we promote or reinforce, either consciously or unconsciously? So I've witnessed some very interesting and enriching conversations just asking leaders what are they promoting and what are they tolerating? And I've heard people say in leadership groups, we allow bullying. We're actually allowing employees to bully each other. Or we have a brutal culture. There's no mistake that goes unnoticed. Or we have a perfectionist culture. It's hard for people to want to make change because they want it to be perfect. They're afraid. So these are things that we've heard some leaders say about their own cultures. So the question for you is, I want to hear, what have you seen? What have you seen be tolerated in an organization or allowed? And or what have you seen promoted or reinforced? Go ahead and type that in the chat window. I want to hear what some of you guys have to say about that. Firefighting is rewarded. That is a great one. I see that a lot. So people save the day, and that is rewarded. So guess what? It promotes more of that, more firefighting happening. Bullying, rank means more than substance. Yes, I've seen that too. Micromanagement. If I hold out long enough, the program will go away. Good one. Everyone's having their own certain way of doing things. Excuse me. A fraternity culture. Too many programs. So these are all things that we sometimes, leaders are really busy. And if we don't get them to reflect on what's happening in the culture, sometimes they just don't, they're not going to take the time to do it. So I really like having a discussion around what we're allowing and what we're creating. And that can really be really enriching way for leaders to connect and get a little accountability for what they're creating as a part of that culture. So I want to talk about the roadmap. I haven't showed it to you yet, and I'm going to let Cara and Andrew share it with you. But in order to get a really good roadmap, you actually need a couple of inputs to the roadmap. So why don't we talk about those really quickly? So there's 4 inputs you need for a roadmap. And you could choose more if you wanted to. But the first one, if you want to create a roadmap to actually change culture, anybody want to take a guess what the number 1 input is, or should be, or could be for a roadmap? You can go ahead and type it in. Leadership behavior, that's a good one. I like that. Yep. Yes, Katie, you are correct. It's a vision for cultural transformation. Most people in an organization, like I said, can answer, what do we do? Not a lot of them can answer, where are they headed? And so do you have a vision? Does everyone know where they're headed with continuous improvement in particular? Because I've seen it too, and you guys have probably heard this as well, is if you don't create the vision and you don't communicate that broadly, people come up with their own ideas of why continuous improvement is being implemented. And sometimes that's not good. Sometimes they think, we're losing all our jobs. So we really want to create a vision for cultural transformation. And there's lots of things you can do here. These are typically the questions that you're going to ask. Does everyone know where they're headed? Are others inspired by that vision? And there, again, are lots of ways to create that vision. Here's an example of some of the vision statements that I've seen different organizations use for their vision statement. The bottom right is actually the state of Washington. Every employee is a problem solver and every leader is a coach. So that is really telling people why we are embarking on a cultural transformation. What is the point? And we really want people to feel it. We want them to be able to see themselves in it. We don't want them to think, I really don't see myself in that vision. We want everybody to be able to see it. The other thing you could do is you could create a vision board. So I just had the pleasure of creating a vision board with Deandra Wardell, a colleague of mine. And this would be a great way for people to participate in a vision board. And this is an example of what an organization might want to do: create ideal conditions for process improvement, build problem-solving muscles. And there's a couple of pieces in here of things that they want to make sure that are a part of that, like making problems visible and promoting experimentation, pointing. So these are things you could do. It's a little plug for Deandra. You should call her if you're looking to do a vision board. You can also do one as an individual if you want to become a better leader. So those are 2 things you can do ultimately to build a vision for cultural transformation. So what I want to know is how many of you actually have a vision? Does your organization have a vision? So I would love to see, if you do, go ahead and put it in the chat window. Does your organization currently have a vision for continuous improvement? Can you repeat it? I would love to know that. Okay. How do you measure culture is a question. We're actually going to share with you, Anju and Cara are going to share with you, how do you measure culture? Because they did it. I thought they did it pretty successfully too. I know I'm building up to the suspense. So Cara says, best run financial services for the best run government. Yes, that was the vision for King County. Our vision is to pursue the exceptional. Though, I think there's a comment there. Okay, so keep going. I'd love to hear some more of those. So building problem-solving muscles is one of my favorites as well, because it really is talking about investing in your leadership and your problem solvers, your employees. So that is the first step. So that's input number one. What do you think input number two is? Someone did say it already, but I'm going to have you guys guess. Reflections on the current culture. So this is to me, a very interesting experience. Getting leadership to discuss culture and coming up with something meaningful to do about it. So do leaders talk about culture? Sure. Do they have meaningful, intentional discussions about culture? Not enough. So how do you create an opportunity for them to create enriching discussions about culture and then actually be doing something meaningful with that information too? So you could have really interesting sessions. You can keep it open-ended. You could have them talk about culture. I'll show you an example of what we did with one of my clients to have these cultural discussions. But it's really around answering some of these questions. What characteristics are describing your culture? How would employees describe your culture? I have also seen that there's a difference sometimes between what leaders believe and what employees believe is the culture. So it's interesting to see a little bit of getting a little feedback on employees as well as leaders. So one of the things that I've done in the past to help generate this discussion is there's two things you could do. You can actually provide a list of lean culture characteristics, what makes up a lean culture, and you could have a list, or you could have people in the session generate a list. So in this next section is Post-it. So this could be a describe a lean culture, and you could have people actually start putting what they think are characteristics of a lean culture, and you could throw them up all on the wall. And if you're in a virtual environment, you could do that in Mural. You can have people throw up Post-its, and then you could so then we have a bunch of stuff, a bunch of characteristics on lean culture. And then I ask people to vote on what do you guys do really well, and where are there some gaps? So then we do multi-voting, and we have people vote on these we think we do really well, and here's some of the gaps. And this could be a really interesting aha moment, and it really gets people to get some agreement on where the opportunities are in the organization. So it's fun, it's enlightening, and it keeps people engaged, and you could certainly do it in a virtual environment. So how would some of your employees describe your organization's current culture? So I've seen a lot of comments. I haven't had a chance to read them all. So how would your employees describe culture? I'll give you an example. So I went it was a city, and everybody introduced me around, and it was interesting. A lot of people said, oh, we're like a family here. And that was really nice. And then when I was working with them a little longer, about a month in, they go, well, every family has its dysfunctions. So that was cute. But there was a sense of family with that organization. And even if there were things that went wrong, ultimately you felt like it's going to be okay. You're going to be okay. We're going to get through it. So it was actually a nice cultural feeling. So how would your employees describe? What have you heard people say? So risk-averse culture. Thank you, Larry. Yep, we see that a lot in government. people don't want to end up in the papers. And so they're a little scared to make change and a little worried. Collaborative, that's wonderful, Michael. It's great to hear that. It depends on your tenure and who you ask. Okay, I get that. It's siloed. Each department feels unique. Yep, that's very true. And why is that? A lot of it is because leaders dictate how people are going to act and what's okay and what's promoted. And leaders do they actually kind of set the stage. A culture of heroics. Thank you. We talked about that as well. Family culture. I agree with you. I've seen that as well. Thank you for sharing that. Okay, so the third input you need is actual agreement on how to leverage the strengths. So you talk about what the strengths are, and they're on those sticky dots. Those were the ones in green. Those were the strengths. But then you say, well, how do we leverage those moving forward? So you're doing something right, hopefully. Hopefully your culture and your organization is doing some really good things. And how do you leverage those going forward? I'll give you a quick example. I was working with a company and they were really big on safety, very, very ingrained in the culture in a lot of ways. And so I said, and they were struggling a little bit with process improvement. And so I said, well, look at what you've done with safety. What made that work? And how do you apply it to the process improvement efforts in your organization? And so it doesn't have to be a strength necessarily in process improvement. It could be something your organization is really good at. And then you think about, well, why are we good at that? What made that successful? And how do we replicate that in some of these areas if we want this to be successful too? So that could be a really enriching conversation as well. How do we leverage those strengths? And these are some of the questions you would ask. What are our organization's cultural strengths? How can we leverage those strengths? You're also going to do the same thing with gaps. So again, if you have the Post-its and you've done multi-voting, they've already identified the gaps and they've already identified the strengths. So what are you going to do now to address the gaps? That's a separate conversation around what the gaps are and some of the things that I always like to talk about root cause because, that's what we do. What are some of the root causes for these gaps? And what could we do around some of those root causes? So these are always easy conversations, but they could be culture changing conversations for sure. And so those are really the 4 things that you really want to think about and address in the culture. I would love to know, what are some gaps you have seen organizations successfully address? You're going to hear from Cara and Anju about what they've been able to do to help successfully address some of these things. But what are some of those things and it doesn't even have to be Lean Six Sigma stuff or process improvement. It could be dealing with anything leaders have to deal with. Could be about equity and social justice. What were some of the things they did, to address that successfully? So I would love to hear some of those if you want to type some of those in the chat window. Okay, let's see. I'm going to keep moving because I want to make sure we have enough time for Cara and Anju. So again, how do you facilitate all this stuff? So I kind of showed you the model. You capture the characteristics. So it could be either the lean characteristics or it could be the the gaps or the strengths, and then you affinitize them and get people to vote on them, multi-vote. And that is a very efficient way, but you could have some really good discussions throughout that process as well, because that's really what's important are those discussions. And then a lot of people will ask me, well, what is on the roadmap? What actually goes on the roadmap? And that's going to depend. That's going to depend on where you are on the journey and what you need to do. Here's just an example of some of the actions. And I'm not going to go into all of these in detail because Cara and Anju are going to show you what they've done. But these are some of the things that have been done with different organizations to increase the results on customers or get better enterprise alignment or work with cultural enablers. And so that will be a reference for you. But again, it's always dependent on where the person is, where the organization is in the and where they want to go, really. So you can do this in a virtual environment. Absolutely. I wouldn't wait. I would break up the activities though into what I would call micro workshops. Maybe you have a vision exercise or activity where you're creating a vision and a vision board. If you don't have your mission and goals, that would be a separate discussion too. Then I would also have cultural reflections as its own segment. And I would talk about strengths, and then what could we do to leverage those, and then gaps and what we could do to address those, as they could be separate depending on how big this group is, your leadership group, or how small. But we definitely want people to stay engaged. I would encourage people to be on video. I would encourage you to use Mural or some other collaborative tool. So you could have people come in here into Mural, and you could ask them a question and they could just start putting in Post-its, and you could do multi-voting right in Mural too. If you haven't tried Mural, I would highly recommend it. It helps you collaborate, brainstorm, sort, and multi-vote all in a virtual environment. So it can be done. And if you want to practice, start with a small group of people and try it out. Okay, so that brings us to the end of the inputs. I know lots of stuff. I kind of started with the Pulp Fiction approach, which is I started with the end in mind. I told you about the roadmap, but there's lots of stuff that has to go in the roadmap for you to have a robust roadmap. We don't just want a crappy roadmap. We want a robust roadmap. That's an official term, just so you know. Okay, so here is the roadmap finally. And here's what it looks like. All I'm going to share about this is on the first column are the Shingo house floors. And across the top is the quarters for 18 months. And this is actually the first roadmap that was done by King County FBOD. So now I'm going to go ahead and take the opportunity to introduce Cara and Anju. How are you guys doing? Are you there? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I'm just having trouble starting my video.
All right. So here we have Cara Cozzetto, Continuous Improvement Manager at King County FBOD, and Anju Greenhouse, Deputy Director. I've had the pleasure of working with both of these ladies since 2013, and hopefully they feel the same way. So anyways, I'll let you guys introduce yourselves a little bit.
Great. I'm Cara Cozzetto. I'm the Continuous Improvement Manager for the Finance and Business Operations Division at King County. I've been working with them for 6 years on their lean journey. I started my lean journey at Virginia Mason Medical Center in about 2001 and was certified in their Virginia Mason production system, and actually have been able to go to Japan and see where the real magic happens. So that's a little bit about me.
Great. And you know what, your mic is not as strong as we want it to be. So if you could fix that, that'd be great. And Anju, go ahead and you introduce yourself as well.
Hi, I'm Unju Greenhouse, Deputy Director for Finance and Business Operations Division. Yeah, we've been working with Tracy since 2013, having lots of fun. We've created at least 4 or 5 iterations of the roadmap for 18-month roadmap in each year. That was a lot of fun doing. We've been on our lean journey since 2013 and still going strong and working on sustaining and bringing this culture continuing in a virtual environment with COVID. It's been very interesting.
It has been interesting. And you know what? It's a journey. That's what I always say. And so sometimes we stumble a little bit. We just get ourselves back on that horse and keep going. Okay, so they have a couple of slides to share. So I'm going to go ahead and be your little slide person. So tell them a little bit about King County, Cara.
All right. So King County is the 12th largest county in the nation. So we have quite the big county here. We have a $90 billion biennial budget. We have about 15,000 plus employees. And we, as the finance central offices, support 50 plus lines of business from a finance perspective.
Cool. How about FBOD?
Yeah, so FBOD, we're a microcosm of the county as a whole. We have about 170 employees. For 2021-22, we have a $56.8 million budget. And our vision is to be the best run financial services for the best run government. A best run government is Dow Constantine, our executive's vision for really transforming government as we know it today. So as you mentioned, one of the first things that we really needed to do in FBOD was really get clear on our direction. This is the first clarity map that we created, really based on the Shingo House. But what we needed to do was really gather our folks together to really get clear on what our vision and our mission was. We had a focus group of about 30 employees who supported really designing and fulfilling this document with our vision and our mission and our values, and really getting clear on what those values are for us in FBOD and how do we want to show up as employees. And then in the next slide, what you see is the purposeful things that we were going to do in kind of high level areas that really supported our work in the Shinko model and how we were going to align and really use the voice of our customer and partner with our technology partners as well to provide really great service, but really get a document that everybody could get aligned to and get behind and understand where FBOD was going. And then the ever famous roadmap, right? So as Tracy mentioned, what we had to get clear on first was what were the 4 areas that we really wanted to get clear on. And so you can see those there. It's culture and relationships. That's really the foundation of the roadmap and how we're really going to engage our employees in our lean journey and keep them really engaged and involved. The continuous improvement and innovation, really, how are we going to use the tools of Lean, of Six Sigma, of really and identify problems, and how do we create really safety around talking about those problems, and then enterprise alignment. How, what do we need to do to get aligned on the direction that we are going from a finance and business operations perspective? And really get clear on those specific things that we're going to do in order to really create alignment and get everybody on the same page. And then customer results were really those guiding principles that we wanted to use to really understand what were our customers experiencing around our services and how could we make that experience better? What could we specifically do in those areas? So one of the things that we did in the customer results areas was we really wanted to figure out, as I mentioned, what our customers were saying. So we did a couple different things. We did what we coined a listening tour, where we went out to some of the larger organizations that we were supporting, like Metro Transit and Public Health and the wastewater treatment division, and sat and just asked them what's their experience in utilizing our services. And all we did was listen and take notes. There was no defending, there was no deflecting, there was no pointing the finger back. It was really we just listened to what they had to say, and we took that information back and purposely identified actions in that customer results section that we felt really could drive a better experience for our customers. And then in our alignment perspective, also really wanted to get clear with our technology partners in what we call the BRIC, our Business Resource Center, and just KCIT as a whole, and what were some of the specific actions that we could take, knowing that we had some large technology changes that we needed to make to some archaic systems. And then just really, what tools are we going to use in order to really support our continuous improvement journey? What Kaizen events, implementing problem boards where employees had an opportunity to just talk about the rocks in their shoes and put a sticky on a board where everybody could see it, and we would have conversations and they could see that actually moving through the system through completion. And that really helped getting all our employees engaged. And the other thing that we did around this board was we checked in on it on a quarterly basis with our leadership team to make sure that we were still doing the things that we needed to do and moving along in our journey. But knowing that, there are bumps in the road and sometimes there's some obstacles. And if we needed to move a sticky, it was okay to move it from one quadrant to the next. But what we did do is if we moved it, we marked it. And so we knew that we had moved it. So we wanted to understand why maybe we had to move that sticky so that we could better manage in the future. The other thing that we did was we met with the leaders on a quarterly basis and had them do what you see here, the check marks on here. What is going well? What is not working? Oh, and so we did a dot exercise where they had different colored dots that they could indicate what were some of the activities that we did that really moved our journey along, and what were some of the things that they didn't feel like had that big of an impact. And we would make adjustments, and that would inform the next 18-month roadmap that we would create along the way. A couple of things that we learned in our second and third iterations, one of the things that we did was we separated our alignment out to be internal alignment. What did we want our FWOD folks to be aligned to? And then external alignment. What did we want our customers or the agencies that we were supporting aligned to? And then in 2019, the organization introduced what they called the lean maturity model, and it had 11 elements associated with it that our senior leadership team felt like would help us move the dial from a county perspective and really try to create alignment from the county. Many organizations were kind of on this individual journey. We were doing a lot of great things in our individual agencies, not a lot of standardization. So this was their attempt in really trying to create some standardization across the county itself. So then the next slide. So then in 2015-16, what we really wanted to get clear on was our leader standard work. And so this was our kind of our mantra around every leader is a coach and every employee is a problem solver. So we got really clear on 6 elements of leader standard work that we wanted our to be really purposeful around and how our leaders were going to show up. A3 use and coaching around those A3s was a piece of it. Huddles and roundings where teams were meeting for 15, 20 minutes a day to really talk about what happened yesterday, what do we need to plan for today, and maybe looking at tomorrow. And then roundings, a couple different types of roundings, performance roundings and process roundings, where we process roundings, we'll go to a team member's desk, they'll pull out their standard work, they'll perform that process, and talk about maybe any rocks that they have in their shoes and any ideas that they might have for improvement, and then we can capture those and move those along. Performance roundings are at their tier boards, where they have their meaningful metrics that are showing the health of their value stream and really any purposeful action that they're trying to do in order to close those gaps. So we got really clear on those elements and really created some commitments on how we wanted our leadership to show up. And then in the next slide, so this is 3 of the 5 roadmaps that we created. And what you can see here is, again, really a way for our leadership to, at a glance, understand where we are. So we used, as you can see, when our first roadmap to our second roadmap, we started color coding things so people could be really clear on where that activity was happening. And maybe if we needed to move that activity to another tier board or something, it was really clear as to where it aligned to on our roadmaps. I think one of the things that this really allowed us to do was, because we involved the leaders and employee focus groups in creating these and really getting alignment and oftentimes buy-in to what we were putting on this map, or that folks really felt invested in it. And so really felt like it really drove very purposeful action across our division.
Cool. I am going to move on. We're going to be short on time, but I wanted to share one of the questions that came up was, how do you measure culture improvement? And the really cool thing is they were pretty successful. It's in employee satisfaction, employee engagement. So tell them a little bit about this slide.
Yeah, so what we did was we identified specific questions on our employee engagement survey that we felt really aligned to our lean journey and really supported and showed that we had engagement. So we were able to really measure where we were seeing improvement. So the different colors represent the different years. And this one dip right here is around my supervisor holding my team member accountable to behavior that we want in our division. And because you can see that over the years that is dropped or remained stagnant, we really did some purposeful work around this. I got certified in training the 5 behaviors of a cohesive team. So we used that model and we put every team member through a 2-day workshop to really get a foundational knowledge and really how can we hold ourselves and our team members accountable by using that model. So we really felt like we had some really good ways to measure whether or not what we were doing was really having an impact on the areas that we really wanted to have an impact on.
Yes, I was really impressed with this survey as well. A lot of the questions were things like, a work unit is open to new ideas to improve the work, and high quality service to our customers, things like that. So there was a lot of good questions in the engagement survey that were related specifically to lean cultures from what I remember. Okay, we're almost out of time. I just want to see if anybody had any questions for Anju and Cara. There's lots of really good stuff. You can see they've been on this journey a very long time. I just had 1 or 2 questions for you, and I'll see if anybody else has questions for you as well. You guys already talked about the things you did to keep it top of mind. Do you feel like you would have done anything different with using the roadmap in terms of using it and deploying it?
One thing I have to say that it did give us I think Cara mentioned earlier, it gave us a really great focus and priorities because we're constantly juggling, especially in government space. We don't have a lot of budget. We're always confined by the resource that we are given. So we tend to do a lot with what we have, and having the roadmap and calling out specific action gave us really great focus around what we need to focus. I think what we could have done better, one thing is that we could have used it as a better communication tool for employees, and we were clear on our focus and priorities for leadership team, but not as much has trickled down to the employee level, and could have used it better in terms of our internal communication, so drive everybody towards the same direction over time.
Good. And did you have any unexpected positive consequences? This will be the last question we have. Any unexpected positive consequences?
I think oftentimes when you have everything that you're working on and put it on a sticky and putting up a wall gives you a great visual about how much you're actually doing. And this is over everything on top of your operational needs, over and above that you're doing. And I think it actually gave us great opportunity to have a good conversation about what are we not doing? How can we prioritize? When we say something is important, how do we make that important? Therefore, something else we might need to do a little less of so that we can drive our resource towards it.
Good. Very nice. Any other questions? Manuel wants to know what's your biggest takeaway? And then we're going to move into our next webinars coming up for February.
So I think for me, getting people involved and engaged from the beginning, and not just handing them a clarity map or an 18-month roadmap and say, here, they need to have some skin in the game and some input, and really feel like they were part in creating it, and some ownership over it.
Mm-hmm. Very nice. Well, I really appreciate you guys coming and sharing your journey. It's funny, I was going to do this roadmap a long time ago. I'm like, well, I should just ask Cara and Andrew to come and do the webinar with me. And they happily obliged me. So I thank you so much.
You're so welcome.
And if you need to reach them, you can certainly reach out to them. And they're both on LinkedIn. And I'm sure they can answer lots of questions that you might have if we couldn't answer them today. Mm-hmm. So what's your call to action? Figure out an assessment, gather your inputs. If you don't have them, which ones are needed? And then how will you get those inputs if you don't have them? So that would be a great start. And then also, if you need help, sometimes people need more help than a webinar. So if you need full facilitation of something like this, I can help you, or Elizabeth, or if you want a co-facilitator. So initially I was facilitating it for the first one, and then Anju and Cara were doing great co-facilitators, and then eventually they just took it over, which is great. We also have Train the Trainer for DIYers, and there's consulting. If you want to do a roadmap and you want feedback on the roadmap, give us a call and we'll give you some feedback. Okay, we've got 2 webinars coming up. I'm going to let Elizabeth talk to these, and then we're going to end the webinar.
One of these is with Jen Tankanau. Jen's taken her 8 years at Toyota North America, her years of being a lean sensei, her experience in multiple industries, and she's using root cause thinking to get over the roadblocks to strategic planning. So that's February 4th. That is going to be a fantastic webinar. So come join us with Jen. And then the next one on February 18th is going to be with lean thought leader Mark Graben. You probably know him from the Lean blog, numerous books on lean healthcare. His latest book is Measures of Success, which are what he calls process behavior charts. I call them control charts. Either way, they are just one of the best ways to get an indication of how you are doing, and he's applying that to healthcare. So I'm going to put both of these in the chat so you can register for those and join us. 2 awesome guest webinars. We are very lucky to have both these people. They are tops in what they do.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth. And I just want to say thank you, everybody, for joining. We went 2 minutes over, actually 3 minutes over. Sorry about that. But I wanted you to hear Anju and Cara, and I want to thank you them for joining us today. And we hope to see you in February at our next webinar. Have a great day, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.